my friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica, and in today's video I am bringing you another episode of Makeup and Artists. I have always been a huge music fan, and so I thought it would be really fun to pull my love for music onto my channel and once a month usually talk to you guys about a musical artist or group that I absolutely love. And today's episode is all about Pearl Jam, which is an American rock / grunge band that grew to massive popularity coming out of Seattle, Washington in the 1990s. Now, there is kind of this battle or fight argument between folks that love hair bands from the 80s and folks that love grunge bands from the 90s. I happen to love both. I really do. But I do lean, I think, a little bit more towards the grunge side of things. Grunge was a completely different musical movement around the world, really, because you had the big hair bands from the 80s with makeup and very glam and, really cool looking, to grunge, which was more of like the long hair, kind of not dirty, but just, I don't know how to describe it, like flannel shirts and, things like that. More, grungy looking, I guess is what I would say. And also the content of the music was very different in the grunge movement than the hair band era, right? The lyrics were much darker, much more serious, much more angsty. And I don't know, I just felt this kinship with grunge music because, you're going through all these different things as a teenager into your early adulthood and beyond. And you have these not easy feelings to deal with and don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about it, but here's this music that's kind of like echoing how you're feeling, and I just thought that was amazing. Pearl Jam is my favorite grunge group, absolutely. I also really love Nirvana and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and Smashing Pumpkins and tons of grunge stuff, or bands, music, but Pearl Jam was just my fave. I saw them in concert. Eddie Vedder, the lead singer, I'm still madly in love with him. He is so good looking and sexy and just all of it. So let me give you just a little bit of information about Pearl Jam before I get into the actual meat and potatoes, and then I'll show you what palette I'll be using. So the main lineup of Pearl Jam consists of Jeff Ament, who played the bass, Stone Gossard, who was on rhythm guitar, Mike McCready, lead guitar, Eddie Vedder, vocals and guitar, and then Matt Cameron played the drums. And keyboardist Boom Gasper has toured with the band since 2002. Former members include Dave Cruzen, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, Matt Chamberlain, and Dave Abrazizi, and Jack Irons were the band's drummers from 1990 to 1998. Now, they outsold and outlasted many of their contemporaries from the grunge era. They have been named the most popular American rock and roll band of the 90s and one of the biggest of the grunge genre, of course. So as you can tell, I do have my eyelids primed in the Juvia's Place Prep Prime Eyeshadow Primer. My eyebrows are done in the clear brow gel Control Freak from NYX. And I wanted to, of course, pull a grungy palette into this video. So I'm using the Cosmic Brushes / Beauty Undergrowth palette. I've only used this twice, and I really wanted to use it again, of course. And I felt like grunge. So what I want to use today is this shade here called Murky. And I'm also going to use, I think, Algae. And then for the shimmers, I want to use, I think, Swamp and Wilderness is what I'm going to use. And I might throw a little bit of this sludge shade in, or roots, I don't know, but definitely going to start off with Algae, putting that in my transition area. And as I put my eye look together, of course, I'm going to be talking to you guys about Pearl Jam, and I'll be doing both eyes on camera today. Okay, so in the mid-1980s, Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament were members of the Seattle grunge band called Green River. Now, I have never heard Green River. I don't know what they sing. I don't know how they sound. But they were, that had some roots in Seattle, popular, people really liked their sound and their music. But I believe it was in 1987, yes, after touring and having some mild success, not, you know, raving success, but, you know, decent, well, mild success, I will say. In 1987, they did break up because they just had some stylistic differences, you know, and Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament kind of went their own way to try to form their own band away from Green River. And they did. Shortly after that, they formed the group Mother Love Bone, which I remember listening to and really liking. And in early 1990, they released their first album titled Apple. But unfortunately, not long after that album was released, their lead singer, Andrew Woods, overdosed on heroin and passed away. So here they have this talent and they want to keep pursuing music, but their lead singer has sadly passed away. But Gossard and Jeff Ament kept writing music together. And they were writing a lot more like edgier, grittier songs than what they had been prior, you know, with Green River and with Mother Love Bone. So they reached out to Jack Irons, who I don't know if he was still drumming with the Red Hot Chili Peppers at that time or had just stopped doing that. And they were like, hey, we would love for you to join with us and be our drummer / singer. And Jack Irons was like, yeah, nah, I don't really want to do that. Maybe let me see. Did he, I don't know for sure, honestly, if he was with the Red Hot Chili Peppers at that time or not, but he turned him down. But he said, I know of someone who I think would make a great lead singer for you guys. And that was Eddie Vedder. And at that point, Eddie Vedder, at that time of his life, Eddie Vedder was living in San Diego and was in a band called Bad Radio, which I have never heard. And also he was working at a gas station. So they send him a demo tape with a few of their songs, and Eddie listens to it and he instantly like sits down and writes the lyrics to Once, Alive, and Footsteps and sends the tape back to Jeff and Stone, and they hear it and they're like, oh, we got to get this guy out here. So they fly Eddie from San Diego to Seattle, and within a week he joined the band. They were like, yes, let's go. So, you know, Eddie of course moves from San Diego to Seattle to pursue being a part of this band. Now, initially, Dave Cruson was their drummer, and they called themselves Mookie Blaylock after the professional basketball player, which I didn't know that. I think that's so cool. I almost kind of wish they'd left their name as Mookie Blaylock, but they ended up changing their name to Pearl Jam. Now, there's a lot of different rumors as to why that happened or how that happened, but ultimately, what I read is that Jeff Ament, I think, came up with the Pearl part of things, and they decided to go with Jam based on their jam sessions with fellow musician Neil Young. So now I'm going to go into Murky and put that in my outer V into my crease. So they had their first official show as Pearl Jam at the Off Ramp Cafe in Seattle on October 22nd of 1990. Then they opened for Alice in Chains, which is another one of my favorite grunge bands, at the Moore Theater in Seattle in December of 1990, and also became their opening act for Alice in Chains' facelift tour. Then in March, oh gosh, that's a lot of eyeshadow. And my mirror keeps getting all tipped funny. Oh well, I can fix that. Then in March of 1991, Pearl Jam released the album 10. And if you have not listened to the album 10, I highly recommend that you do that. And of course, like I do with all of these videos, I'm going to link a ton. That looks awful. I'll fix that. I'm going to link a ton. Actually, this brush, I love this brush for my transition area, but not so much for my outer V. Hold on just a second. Okay, what I was saying is I'm going to link a ton of Pearl Jam songs in my description box so you guys can go listen, because 10 is, I believe, their best album to date. And it had 11 songs on it, and all of them, or it has, it's still, you can still get the album 10, I think, right? Has 11 songs on that album that are just amazing, okay? Amazing. Now, let me give you some stats about the 10 album. This album stayed on the Billboard charts for nearly 5 years, went 13 times platinum, and has become one of the highest selling rock albums of all time. Now, like I mentioned at the very beginning, with grunge music, the lyrics were pretty dark compared to their predecessors, the hair bands. You know, the hair bands was all about like sex, drugs, and rock and roll and fun, you know, fun music. Obviously, I mean, I love hair bands, but the grunge era brought in a lot of very serious topics: depression, taking one's life. I know I'm not allowed to say the other word. Loneliness, homelessness, anger, school shootings. I mean, just stuff that like nobody really talked about in songs before, but that were happening in the world around us that we were all feeling. And so it just kind of like brought, I don't know, notice to these things, right? And if you couldn't like go and sit down and talk to a friend or a family member about how crappy you were feeling, you know, you could listen to music and know that like somebody else felt that way too, you know? Not to say that like, I mean, I know that kind of sounds very depressing, but it kind of was in a sense, but also just this like, I don't know, just there was no fluff to it really at all, which I really appreciated and really respected and liked that about the grunge movement. Now, I will never forget, I was in high school when 10 came out, and I think the very first song I ever heard was, I think Even Flow, pretty sure, or Alive, one of those. And I saw, like, of course I saw them on MTV. I think is the first, I might have heard them on the radio, but I saw them on, when I did see them on MTV, I was like, whoo, like, you know, I mean, I had heard Nirvana before, so I had already heard grunge, the sound of grunge and the look of grunge before Pearl Jam, but I just instantly was completely taken aback and taken with Pearl Jam. Loved their look, especially Eddie, loved their sound. Eddie Vedder's voice is so gritty and raw and deep and rich and just incredible. Like I get the chills, full chills, thinking about Eddie Vedder's voice and just their sound. You know, all of them were such talented musicians, just incredible. And I know every single song on the album 10. My favorite songs are Jeremy, Black, Porch, of course, Once, Even Flow, Why Go, Oceans. I mean, Deep, Release. They're all so good. They're so good. I highly recommend you check out that album if you never have. It's just incredible. And also check out the lyrics. Like I mentioned, I've said this multiple times now, they were just dealing with things that nobody had really talked about before, but that were happening and that, you know, we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about how we were feeling about these things. And finally, we had music to kind of echo how we were feeling and what we were thinking and what we were wanting to say. Here's this song, these musicians, Pearl Jam, doing it for us. And it was just awesome. I absolutely loved it. Now, Dave Crewson left the band in 1991 and checked himself into rehab for alcoholism and ended up being replaced by Matt Chamberlain, who had formerly been with Edie Brickell and the Bohemians, who I loved her, still do. Then he left and joined the Saturday Night Live band and was replaced by Dave Abbruzzese, who continued on with the rest of the live shows performing the 10 album. And, you know, they just blew up. They blew up, you know, just bam. I mean, everybody that I knew loved Pearl Jam, was listening to Pearl Jam, just like, whoa. And, you know, like I said, the 10 album was super freaking successful. I mean, just ba-boom. I'm going to go back in with this brush into murky just a little bit more, and then I'll move on to other shades, I promise. Now, the thing about it, and I think a lot of grunge bands experienced this feeling, is that, yes, they wanted to be successful as musicians, and they wanted to be able to live off what they were doing, but this huge fame and notoriety came with their being discovered and, you know, obviously releasing their music out into the world. And they struggled with that. They really did, because they were very, you know, the grunge movement was very anti-corporation, you know, very anti and very anti-capitalist, right? but we're living in a world that's very corporate and very capitalist. And so they really struggled with their success as musicians and, wanting to reach the masses, but also becoming very commercialized and very MTV-ized, right? And so that was a struggle for them because, of course, MTV had taken over the world basically when it comes to music. They knew that they were going to have to make videos and stuff, but they didn't want really to have to do that. But they did do it, and they had great videos, amazing videos, but they really wanted their music to be like in the eye of the beholder, like get the message the way you want to interpret the message, not the way the video was having you interpret the message, right? So now I'm going to go into Swamp, put that here, and I'm going to put Wilderness towards the front. So in 1993, they went back to the studio to record another album. And what I read was they were like kind of nervous because 10 had been so successful. They were not sure that their next album would be as successful, but it kicked ass too. And that was the album Versus. Let's see. That album sold 950,378 copies in the first week that it was released and outperformed all other entries in the Billboard Top 10 that week combined. And that held the record until, was it 1998? Yeah, 1998, when Garth Brooks released his double live album. Now, Versus, let me switch my notes around here because there's no way I could memorize all this stuff. Versus had the songs Go, Daughter, again, I'm getting chills, full chills, one of my favorite songs ever made, Animal, another one, and Dissident. I've got to spend my day today listening to this music. I mean, those songs were so good. And there were other really good songs on that album too, but those were the ones that were like, more mainstream. And of course, that just blew up all over again. Blew up, absolutely. And I think that was, did I see them in 93? I'm pretty sure I saw them in 93. Yeah, I did, because I was a freshman in college when I saw them. So good. Now, here's where things got to be a little tricky for Pearl Jam with the whole concert stuff. So in 1994, was it 1994 that they had the lawsuit? No. In 1984, they found out that Ticketmaster, who was, they were working with to sell their tickets to their concerts, were massively screwing over their fans and like charging them these like hidden fees that they were pocketing. And, the band wasn't getting that. And so the tickets were much more higher priced than what Pearl Jam felt was feasible, right? And they were like, this is bullshit. We don't want to have to charge our fans tons of money to come and see our concerts. Like, that's not what they were about. Obviously knowing that they need to make a living off of what they're doing, but also wanting to keep it fair and reasonable for their fans. Like, they just didn't want to have to, I don't know, I'm going to use my finger. This is not working as well as I wanted it to. They just didn't want people to have to be stuck with these horrendous ticket prices, right? So they were like, this is BS. We're not going to put up with this. We're going to sue. So they did. They sued Ticketmaster. And also around that time, they stopped performing at venues that the tickets were largely being sold through Ticketmaster. Well, that was like one of the only places that was like selling or that you could get concert tickets through was Ticketmaster to all these different venues. So that was, really limiting what they could do in terms of where they were going to go for their concerts. Now I'm going to go into Wilderness and put that down towards the front. I'm going to try a different brush. These shadows are just better with a finger, but I do want to try initially with a brush. So of course, this put a huge damper on their success in some ways because, just not fun at all. Because they, how are they going to have concerts, tickets being sold? I mean, they did find other avenues to do that through, but Ticketmaster was huge. And they did try to get like other bands to join in and like, let's form this like big, boycott against Ticketmaster. And a lot of the other bands are like, we're going to stick with Ticketmaster because they, wanted to make money, and they wanted to have successful concert tours. Anyway, that lawsuit went all the way to the Supreme Court. And I think what I remember reading, if I wrote it down, is that the Department of Justice ended up dropping the case because, of course, money makes the world go around, capitalist corporate society. And, a couple of the band members from Pearl Jam actually said that, like, that was a kind of not their demise necessarily, but just really hindered their financial success in some ways, was that whole issue with Ticketmaster. Now, another thing that started happening too around this time in like the mid 90s was that, they did feel a lot of pressure to tour and, also keep up with their success from 10. But another thing is that Eddie Vedder was the one that was really getting all the attention for Pearl Jam because, he was the lead singer, gorgeous, like I've mentioned. I'm going to fix this. It's kind of got weird right here. Gorgeous guy. But there were other people that were involved with Pearl Jam, okay? Like, he wasn't even the founding member of Pearl Jam. He was just part of the band. He happened to be the lead singer. So, that started to cause some issues with the band. They were like, hello, like, we're here too. It's not just Eddie. We're all here. We're all very talented. Come on, you guys. And then later in 1994, they did release the album Vitalogy, which is another one of my favorite albums of Pearl Jam's. So good. So good. Although I still will say that 10 is my favorite album. I liked Versus too, but Vitalogy was really good. And at that point, with the Ticketmaster stuff and kind of like, not a ton of infighting, but there was a little bit of infighting about the whole situation with Eddie Vedder. Dave Abruzzese, the drummer, he didn't really agree with the whole Ticketmaster boycott and the lawsuit and all that stuff. He ended up leaving the band. And although Vitalogy was a very successful album, it wasn't their most successful album. It was, didn't do as well as 10 nor Versus, but I still really loved the album. Let me give you some facts about that one. This was originally released on vinyl because they, again, trying to pull away from the corporate, commercialized, capitalist stuff. But people just wanted it on CD and tape. So a couple weeks later, it was released on tape and CD because that's just, that's what people wanted it. That's the format people wanted it on more commonly. This CD became the second fastest selling in history with more than 877,000 copies sold the first week, but not as much as Versus. It was known as their most original and uncompromising album. The song Spin the Black Circle won a Grammy in 1996 for Best Hard Rock Performance, and also the songs Not For You, Corduroy, Better Man, and Immortality were on that CD, and Better Man is one of my favorite songs they've ever done. The song Better Man is about a woman being in a horrible relationship with a man. And I was in a horrible relationship with a man at that time. And so that song really hit home for me. And I just used to scream that song at the top of my lungs while I was driving my car. And also, let me back up too. The song Daughter, and did I already talk about this? Well, I don't know if I touched on it as much as I wanted to. That really hit home for me too, because my dad and I did not have a relationship. And I was really hurting from that, really hurting and really angry about that. And to have this song really echoing my heart and my soul and my feelings, it was just like, wow, it really hit me. In 1996, they released the album No Code, which I don't know that I remember that album. And also by 1998, Irons, who had been, Dave Abruzzese left, then Jack Irons came on as their drummer. By 1988, he had left because he was really sick of their touring schedule, because they had tons of tours and, concerts and just go all the time. And that's when Matt Cameron, the drummer, joined. That same year, in 1998, they released the song Last Kiss, which is a cover of a 1960s ballad. And all the proceeds for that went to aid the refugees of the Kosovo War. Kosovo War, that's hard to say. And in 2000, they released the album Binaural, I think that's how you pronounce it, Binaural. And this album was kind of break from the grunge sound that people were kind of getting sick of by that point. Because, you know, grunge was popular in the 90s, and by the late 90s, early 2000s, people were like, okay, we're over the grunge stuff. That was more of a rock album, and I did not get that album at all, because I don't know. I heard some of it, but I was like, nah, I don't know. Now, on June 30th of the year 2000, there was a really awful, tragic event that happened. They had gone on a worldwide tour, and they were performing in Denmark, and the crowd like rushed to the stage, and I believe 9 people were like crushed underfoot under this stampede of people rushing to the stage. And you know, that absolutely devastated the band. Devastated, because I mean, that would the absolute last thing that they would want to have happen. I mean, it was just awful, you know. And that's, people are in a crowd like that, and they're all excited, and that's happened before. I remember that happened at an AC/DC concert too. Horrible. In 2002, they released the album Riot Act and went on tour in 2003 in the US and Australia. In June of 2003, they actually left Epic Records and said they had no interest in signing with another label. So I don't really know exactly who they were working with, but not with Epic Records. They recorded the song Man of the Hour in partnership with Amazon.com, and that was part of the Big Fish soundtrack, that movie. In July of 2003, they released Lost Dogs, a 2-disc compilation of their B-side tracks. That's really good. They've continued to tour and release more albums and songs, and released their 12th album called Dark Matter in 2024. And I have not heard that. Another thing that they were very outspoken about was being pro-choice. And in 1992, they performed on the MTV Unplugged. That was really popular in the early 90s of different bands. You know, they would just sit down with acoustic instruments and just play different songs. And Eddie Vedder wrote pro-choice during that performance. I want to say like on his face, on his forehead, right? Or his arm. I think it was on his forehead. And that performance was one of the most amazing performances of all time of an MTV Unplugged. Pearl Jam were also members of Rock the Vote and Vote for Change, and Vedder was also a very outspoken supporter of the Green Party, and Pearl Jam actually endorsed Ralph Nader, former presidential candidate Ralph Nader. He was, I guess, represented the Green Party back in the 90s. I do vaguely remember that. Pearl Jam had sold more than 85 million albums worldwide by 2018, making them one of the best-selling groups of all time. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2017. And an article in Rolling Stone magazine, like the readers poll, ranked them 8th in the top 10 live acts of all time. And I will agree to that. I saw them, like I said, I saw them in the early 90s. I think it was 1993, maybe 1994, I don't know. And they were just amazing, amazing. I almost feel like Eddie Vedder sounds better live than on CD or tape or whatever. I mean, he's just so great live, and he's really fun to watch, you know. He does make some very strange facial expressions, I will say that, but he is just awesome. So I made a huge mess down here. I love how this look turned out. I think it's very grungy. I'm gonna go clean this up, put the rest of my stuff on, and I will come back. So this, of course, is my finished look, and I really like how it turned out. I don't know that it's grungy enough. Like, I could have gone grungier, of course, with the palette, but I wanted to use shades I hadn't used yet. And I don't know, as I was finishing up the look though, I'm like, I don't know if this is really grungy, maybe grunge glam, although I have no idea what the hell glam even is. And of course I did have to throw on my flannel shirt because I had to emphasize the grunge style of the 90s, and a brown lippy too. So let me show you everything I have on my face, and then I'm gonna go bonkers one more time over Pearl Jam, and then I'll end this video. So for my base products, I use the L'Oreal Paris 24 Hour Foundation Infallible Pro Glow in the shade 203. This is just kind of taken over from the other 2 products I was using. I don't know why, but I really like it. And then I use the CoverGirl Clean Professional Loose Setting Powder in Translucent. For my blush, I use the Made by Mitchell Blame It on the Blush palette. Again, I used this one here called Terracotta 2s. Just wanted a darker blush shade. maybe more grungy tone, and I love it. I think it's beautiful. For my highlighter, I use the Anastasia Beverly Hills Aurora Glow Kit. I use this shade right here called Helia in my inner corners and also on my face. Love. For my bronzer, still using the LYS No Limits Bronzer in Motivate. Same mascara I've been using a bajillion times, the Maybelline New York Sky High. I did not use an upper lid liner. Well, I did, but I used an eyeshadow out of the palette. I'll show you here in just a second. And then on my lips, I used a new lippy from Menagerie Cosmetics in the shade Barkeology. And I'm going to show you what I got for my Black Friday haul in a video next week, and this will be part of that. And I just love this. I wasn't going to use it because I'm like, well, I haven't shown it yet, but I just felt like it was the perfect lip color, 90s grunge. I did it. Love it. Okay, Undergrowth palette, Cosmic Beauty / brushes. Love this. I did use bark on my upper lids and also on my lower lash lines, and I smoked it out a little bit with algae, right? Yeah. Love this palette so much. It's a grungy, earthy, mossy green, army green, olivey green, brown, flippy dream, okay? Now, I will say that Fireflies, I think, is my favorite shadow or shimmer in this palette, but this was gorgeous, this Wilderness shade. I really like that towards the front of my lid. And what else? Other one did I use? This one, Swamp. Very nice. I mean, yeah, gorgeous. I just kind of think I could have gone grungier if I'd gone into the darker tones, of course, like out here, instead of using murky. But that was nice. And I liked it with algae. I mean, I love it. Could have been grungier, yes, or deeper grunge, but love this. And I cannot wait to play with this again. I'm going to do another multiple looks video with it because the My No Buy is here. I just have to encourage you guys, like I said before, I'm going to link a ton of Pearl Jam songs in my description box. Go and listen to their music. I know that Pearl Jam's not for everybody, but their lyrics are so good. Eddie Vedder's sound is so good. And the musicians, the drums, the guitar, everything, just so good. And it's like this very, I don't know, it's like it grabs my soul. It really does, their music. All the things, lyrics, sound, all of it. And I'm just so happy that the grunge movement happened in the 90s, because it really just hit a deep chord with me. And Pearl Jam was the group that just I glommed onto with both hands and just was like, this music is so incredible. They're so talented. And I love the fact that they were so, I mean, even though you have to be commercial in order to be successful in the music industry, you have to be. But I do love the fact that they were really bucking against the capitalist and commercialness of music. Loved it, you know, loved that they sued Ticketmaster, even though it didn't go anywhere. And I do feel a little bit bummed that there weren't more bands that like joined along with them. I mean, come on. But also after reading the article and the stuff that I read, hearing them say like, that kind of screwed us over with our career a little bit. So, I mean, I think they're all doing very well financially, I guess. I don't know. I don't know any of them. How would I know? I hope they are. But they were so successful, you know, and just really took the music world and me and my friends and that whole generation by storm, you know. Just please, though, go and listen to their music, listen to the lyrics. Just, I don't know, invest some time with Pearl Jam. They will always be such a very, very special, meaningful musical group in my life and in my heart and in my soul. And I will always have a huge crush on Eddie Vedder. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your lives to sit down and watch this video. If you're new here and you enjoyed what you saw, please consider subscribing, smash the like button, and of course, comment down below in the comment section. I love to chat with you guys there. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. I cannot wait to see you guys again in my next video. But in the meantime, please take very good care of yourself. Be well, safe, happy, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Drop it.